There is a certain asymmetry, though, when one side, which may assert that the other side broke a rule first. I want to come back to that in a second. But when one side is not only happy, but feels fully justified in using the coercive power of the state or maybe other institutions to order the world in the way it sees as just. And the other team is, live and let live.
I'm not sure which teams you're describing as which anymore. I mean, I would have said, at one time that maybe at least Republicans paid more lip service to the idea of live and let live, and the left was a little more authoritarian. But, more and more, I hear people on the right say, you know what, we tried toleration.
Yep.
We tried live and let live. And those, commies, lefties, progressives, whatever, they came after us, and so now we got to do the same. You hear that on everything from trade policy. Well, China started it, so now we gotta fight fire with fire. You hear it on partisan warfare, but also just kind of everyday domestic policy as well. The idea that, well, sure, we would love to have free speech, but we're going to need to, pass a law coercing the social media companies to, and then on the left, they have one proposal, and on the right, they have the other proposal, but they're both using the power of the state to try and coerce a private business to help their side win, or would if they could get away with it.
Today, one side's got their hands on the levers and not just the state.
So I do think one thing that we learned coming out of the COVID pandemic was social media companies really cooperated with and were coerced by, in a kind of reciprocal way that's hard to disentangle, the public health establishment. Yeah. And so, the Twitter files, Reason did a bunch of reporting and obtained a bunch of documents about sort of a similar phenomenon within Facebook, where you saw, people within the bureaucracies of these social media companies sometimes reaching out and asking to be told what to do, but also sometimes having actors from the state, from the CDC, from the FDA, from the State Department, from all kinds of places, reaching out and basically saying, that's a nice social media company you have there. Right, It'd be a shame if something happened to it if you got accused of disseminating misinformation. And so I do think, my bias as a libertarian is to kind of ask the question, where is the state exerting power, even if it is subtle power, even if it is implied power? And it's true often that there are going to be eager collaborators. That's always the case in authoritarian regimes. But I still think in the end, the real villain isn't the guy at Twitter who happens to be a lefty. The real villain is the guy at the CDC putting the pressure on the guy at Twitter.
Maybe the greater villain. But did you see any evidence of of resentment, resistance, anybody taking offense on the among the social media actors?
Oh yeah, I think so. There was absolutely, in those email chains that came out and in the direct message chains that came out, there were people, sometimes in other conversations saying, hey, is this legal? Hey, is this wise? Hey, this doesn't comport with our standards. And that actually, I think, was underappreciated in those conversations. It was often the case that they had some kind of existing moderation policy, and then someone internally or externally said, okay, we got to block this guy. And somebody somewhere in the chain said, on what grounds? And we also did see, people from the House of Representatives, from the Senate, reaching out and saying, you don't have to follow these rules. So there, and some unexpected people like Ro Khanna and others, kind of just saying, this isn't consistent with our principles of free speech, and it's not going to end well. So I actually do think, not to be like Mr. Rogers about it, but like, you can look for the helpers, you can look for people who are trying to do the right thing, and they're there. Good
to know. Can we hope for some? Now there's been a scandal's not too big a word, I don't think. Scandalous disclosures of things that many people suspected all along, that the government was being knowingly duplicitous about some of the mandates and interpretations of the facts and the science at the time. Now there's been a string of these disclosures and even confessions about what was known and not known about the origins of the virus, about masks, about whether the Barrington Declaration recommendations were at least legitimate and discussable. Anything going to come of that, or will that all be simply evaporate?
Gosh, I'm so torn because on the one hand, I would just love to think that maybe somewhere in the system, someone would acquire a little bit of humility.